Hello, this is Deborah Anderson, the Black Woman Animator, coming back to you with another video. And in this video, I have Tayo Fasunon from Quadron Studios. So tell us about yourself and what your current role in animation is.
Okay. My name is Tayo Fasunon. I've been in animation for about 13 years. Started animation back when it wasn't much of a career option. It was just something that I had always wanted to do. So when I got into it back then, there weren't many people doing animation, and as a matter of fact, it wasn't even very clear exactly how it could be monetized. But I saw, I got into it and like, you know what, I've always wanted to do this. Let me give this a shot. And so the shot became a career. So we essentially have had to, build the systems, so to speak, by which it can become a business. We've had to do a lot of figuring it out. A lot of connecting the dots to find out how animation can be a business in Nigeria, because that's the specificity. The truth is that animation has been around as an industry for about more than 90 years now. It's been viable in Nigeria is something that I think came up only in the past 10 or so years. That's my a bit of my journey. I've been involved in various projects, over the years. I was co-director on there was this project called Bedu, You Don't Show. There was featuring some two characters who were watching TV, trying to have a good time on TV, and so I was co-director on that. Who wrote that script. Afterwards, I did something called National Cake. Afterwards, I did. We start myself and my friend Uche started Quadron Studios in 2015, late 2015. Since then, we've been forging a path to make world-class animation from Africa a reality. Yes, actually, because that company started with from the idea that if we told our African stories with world-class production values, we would make them that there's a market for that. So we've been over the years building capacity as well as doing a lot of adverts. Because we gotta keep the lights on.
Definitely.
So we've been in that process since 2015. Yes, and it's been quite an interesting journey since then. We've also gotten into some virtual reality production, which is an area of CGI content that I think is going to grow significantly as the years go by. We have a lot of stories to tell, and we fully expect that the coming times, that next year and so on, we'll see some of those stories. The world will begin to see some of the things that we've been looking at. Quadron Studios. If I may segue a little bit, I also did a bit of writing for this project that I worked on It was a white paper on the animation industry, just to chronicle its history, what has happened, what's been, what's the story of the Nigerian animation industry, and so on and so forth, and what's its place in the world. So I led that project, worked on that, and that also, that process of research and going all the way back to where cartooning became a thing in Nigeria. Draw the timeline to this moment. It also helps me personally, and well, I like to think everybody who has read the book, to appreciate the journey of African Nigerian animation production. So, I don't know. There are probably a couple of other things that I've left out, but I think that should be it for now. Just to cut it short.
Yeah, I was taking a look at your white paper this week. It's very.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I do my research, so I highly suggest that people go out and read that.
Thank you.
So in your childhood, what got you interested in animation?
Yeah, that. Well, Voltron. Voltron was completely awesome. The that story, that world, those characters became they I mean they made you think that anything was possible, and then, but of course it's not just Voltron, but we watched quite a few cartoons back then: Super Ted, Danger Mouse, and of course DC Comics, Marvel Comics, all those things. So those things really got me um, uh, very interested in creating worlds. I'm a bit of a visual storyteller in that I dabble a bit into various arts. I have a little bit of music in there, a little bit of just fine arts, a bit of drama. So so many a times when an idea hits, it finds expression in all of those ways. And so yeah, the the cartoons that we watched back then, that were available back then, really inspired. And then I think something else that drove my interest in animation was Aladdin. Aladdin and Pocahontas. When I watched Aladdin, that was perhaps my own first experience of getting your mind blown. That a whole new world sequence was something that, as a child, you wish you wonder, you don't wonder how they did that, but you want to live in that world, and
Right.
yeah. And I think one of my earliest experiences of a superhero was the Spider-Man cartoons, right? um so back then, I'm talking 3 4, I used to spend a lot of time just trying to draw Spider-Man. And folks be like, "What's he doing? Why is he drawing circles?" And and my dad would be, "Let him draw them. Someday they will make sense." yeah, yeah. So that was. I mean, those things. There were so many things that inspired. Yeah, there are so many things. Yeah, so I guess. I guess as the times go by, maybe some of these other things will come up. But for now, yeah.
So with such a stringent culture as Nigerian culture of becoming your family, when you become a doctor and a lawyer, typically were your parents supportive of your artistic journey? Because I know we deal with that in being Black in America, so I can only imagine in Nigeria.
Actually, so this To add some information, I studied mathematics. Right, so that was my first degree. That was um, my background. But even back then, I had noticed that I was pretty artistic and I liked the arts. So I would say to myself that, okay, if you're dancing to the sound of a distant drum, dance well. So that when people see you dancing, though they can't quite hear what you're dancing to, they will perhaps see that there's a system to your chaos. So, so that was pretty much my experience in that I from the get-go, I knew I had to make this make sense. It has to um, I have to be able to communicate it to someone who is not familiar with that industry. And if I would say again that back then there wasn't much of an industry, so you couldn't really point at any success stories to say, "Hey, look, that guy is an animator, and I mean, look how well he's doing." So we had to sort of create the business models, right? And was it was easier to communicate the business models once I mean, we knew how we were going to make a career out of it, how we were going to generate income out of this. So that was how I was able to get their support. Of course, it wasn't a very easy conversation at the start, but guess my dad especially was a very imaginative person, you know. So he did his research. I was like, okay, there's something in there.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, so what are if we're going to talk about the landscape of animation in Nigeria and on the continent, what do you think as far as interest? Just to inform like my viewers who are typically American or maybe from the UK. What are some ways that Nigerians become interested in animation generally, and what is the growing interest like in the country?
I would say it's exceeded my own expectations. Um, you would, in the white paper, when I was rounding up that white paper, I think that was 2 years ago. My submission then was that we had a talent crisis. I tried to avoid that particular language, but that was my submission. That most of the significant projects simply could not be staffed because we did not have enough skilled guys in the country to pull those things off. Um, but that has changed significantly. Um, significantly. So you found over the last 2 years specifically, we found a lot more people take on character animation, and we found a lot more people attempt to tell stories. The number of highly skilled animators, the number of highly skilled individuals is not very high even now, but I wouldn't bet against the Nigerian animators at this point based on how fast it took to get a decent crop of skilled guys. And if you know what you're looking for, you can assemble a solid team in Nigeria right now. That was not possible 4 years ago at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's in terms of talent availability. Um, Distribution is still pretty much where it was 2 years ago, unfortunately. We do not have, we do not yet have homegrown strong distribution systems. Yes, there's Netflix Niger, but as you well know, it will be the token content that will make it into Netflix Niger. We do not yet have large numbers of content being bought wholesale in Nigeria, or I may hazard to say in Africa. The biggest buyer of content still is MultiChoice, so DSTV, and I haven't yet seen them buy or commission any Nigerian made animation so far. I know that Cartoon Network is doing some work prospecting. I know that Triggerfish is doing some work prospecting. Unfortunately, I heard, well, this is a bit of a segue. I heard that Triggerfish is moving a lot of its production to Ireland, you know, because the this is a segue, but the digital, not digital lab, the Story Labs project. What's that? Mama K Super 4 something. That project was animated in Ireland, and now Triggerfish has acquired the Irish company animating that. So, that would have been a success story for for African animation if that could be made here. But that's the situation as far as that project goes. However, there are movements, entrepreneur-led movements, projects like Malaika, that's Ant Hill and Unique Studios Malaika. That was for me a strong indication of what was possible. I think spoofs. I think there was this superhero thing by Spoof Animation that also showed what was possible in the 2D space. Yes, Ridwan Moshood's project, the Garbage Boy and Trash Can, getting picked up by Cartoon Network. Now, those are indicators, right? But personally, I am a big believer in the local market. I think that you're not going to get a groundswell of content until we can find a way to solve the local distribution problem. That is, how do we get animation from Nigeria to Nigerians, or from Africans to Africans, so that the entire value chain is local? We haven't solved that problem yet. It's something I think about, when I'm not working, because it seems like a space that nobody is directly trying to access or trying to fix. It just, for all I know, it might require someone from the animation production, the section of the industry, to backwards integrate to create a distribution chain for animation, because somebody has to do it. And since the traditional distributors have not yet prioritized animation, and that, truth is that I imagine that the decisions are driven by the data they have access to. Because indeed, it is true that animation box office numbers are typically lower than live action box office numbers. And I'm talking about animation from outside of Nigeria. So, I can imagine that an investor will be like, why should I invest in this thing? Perhaps there's not much of a market for it. But those of us who are closer to the industry know that there is that. Well, this is a personal opinion, right? I think that animation is not well understood by the existing distributors, so they try to market it the way they market live action products, right? Thing is, unlike a live action movie that is sold by its star, animation is sold by its characters. So and then folks need to create avenues and opportunities for younger children to to go to the cinemas, without having to be on the coattails of their parents. So so I think that there are possibilities in the Nigerian slash African animation space, and
Yeah.
I mean both from production, but distribution right now, I don't see any serious work being done to connect that local value chain. Right now, the opportunities are still out in the world. So,
Mm-hmm.
folks are meeting with a view to going to film festivals and, connecting with distributors across the globe, to access markets outside of Africa. Yeah, I mean, if the
Mm-hmm.
Remote project is a case in point, it's
Mm-hmm.
Cartoon Network that took it on. Cartoon Network is um, is catering to essentially the Western gaze, you know.
Okay.
So yeah, so whatever comes, whatever is on Cartoon Network must be tailored to that market,
Mm-hmm.
because there are jokes that the Nigerian market would get that would be lost on a Western audience, and so those jokes will not, will likely not feature. It will be the jokes that the Western audience will recognize, and appreciate, that would
Mm-hmm.
make it work. So you get, so that's pretty much where I think things are right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It seems to be
um,
pretty consistent that the people who have the money don't understand the medium, because in America we have a similar, it's like the issue you have with the people in distribution, um, for you, like not understanding. There's like in animation companies in America, it's like they're not in the animation industry, so they don't get it, or that's why animated movies come out where the story is like, why they're pretty much trying to sell toys or trying to sell video games, or it's all about capitalism as opposed to animation. So it seems pretty consistent of like the people with the money are making bad decisions, or just don't
yeah.
understand.
Personally, now, this, haven't seen Life of Pi, then Life
Mm-hmm.
After Pi. I sort of
Mm-hmm.
became a local activist
Mm-hmm.
after seeing that Life After Pi documentary, because
Mm-hmm.
the for me the gap here is is the absence of animators.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying the absence of people who actually create animation at the decision making tables.
Right.
So there's, these days we talk about diversity, right? There
Mm-hmm.
is a certain appetite, such that decision making tables around animation seem to not feature, especially at the highest levels, folks who come from a background in animation, who
Mm-hmm.
who understand the process of creating it, the value it brings, as well as um, how to monetize it. It appears
Right.
that most of us who create have the monetizing part as a blind spot. So because
Mm-hmm.
we don't understand how to make money from it, we don't get invited to these conversations.
Right.
But so that's one thing that I am hoping our generation will change
Exactly.
by by connecting the dots well enough, so
Mm-hmm.
that we are at the very uh, end of the value chain where the big decisions are being made. Um,
Mm-hmm.
this is a complete aside, but well, not a complete aside, but because I'd always wondered why VFX companies did not own movies.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the problems that were outlined in the movie, like in the documentary Life After Pi, were because the VFX companies did not own their content. So they didn't get
Okay.
any. cuts in the upsides. They were unable. I mean, for instance, if I was the producer and I hired a director, that is answerable to me. He's not going to be on somewhere on the other side of the planet while I'm slaving away here. He's got
Yeah.
to be here. Which why Weta Digital has been quite successful. They don't have those problems. Peter Jackson is a stakeholder in Weta Digital. When you see his production diaries, he's not in Hawaii or somewhere. He's not enjoying himself somewhere. He's right there in the trenches, cracking out the visual effects. So that's why they're able to get those things done on budget, on time. Because the the director has skin in the VFX game. So that for us, I mean, that's how we are building the Nigerian animation industry, for instance. It's creator led, right? We are building it with the mindset that look, the everything that has to do with the how this thing is exploited, we will have a say in that. I personally, it's always boggled my mind on why 8 years after, is it 8 years? No, 8 years, 2012. 8 years after Life After Pi, Vancouver happened. NPC Vancouver. NPC Vancouver happened, wherein, they, after doing all the overruns on, was it Sonic the Hedgehog, the studio just shut it down, and that was like, wait a second, come on, it's been 8 years, and this lessons out in the public domain. Why? But now, I'm not the expert. I don't understand that. It's the truth. I don't understand that industry. And I don't understand why they are unable to, backward integrate and control their own IPs. I don't understand. Um, you know, well, perhaps.
Yeah. So what are the opportunities for learning animation in Nigeria in general? Well, how do people learn?
Okay, now, the internet has been fantastic to us. I tell you, most of the learning that I have seen has come from YouTube. And something else that's going on is some informal mentorships,
Okay.
wherein you spot somebody with talent and passion, just casually take them under your wing and point out the roadblocks in their art. Because one thing that is noteworthy about the animation knowledge really is that the bulk of it is not particularly difficult. But there are these roadblocks that could keep you stuck for days on end.
Yeah.
So if you had an expert or someone with more experience standing behind you or standing around you that you could show your work to, and guy can say, hey, look, you're having duplicated faces here, so that's why your mesh is looking funny. This curve is not right. You need to have this arc is not right. That's why your character is moving in a blocky way. Things that might have taken you weeks to see, but someone who has some experience able to spot that at a moment, and then help you through that roadblock, and you keep moving on along your learning path. I found that adds significant value, and it's not very expensive to do. So a lot of that has been happening. We also at Quadron Studios last year put together some trainings just to upskill people, because my thinking is that the opportunity in the animation space is coming. As large projects get made. I mean, I'm looking at Malika, and I'm thinking at some point Malika will get funded. Now, when Malika gets funded, at the minimum, they will need to push out 13 episodes. To push out 13 episodes, you're going to need some artists to make that happen.
Right. So so I want to talk about, the micro problems and the macro problems. So what are the obstacles like on the for Nigerians on the macro level, or sorry, the micro level, which is like money, like electricity, and then on the macro level, you kind of mentioned it earlier, the lack of strong, viable distribution network, access like to the market in cinema, television, and digital. Like, what are the micro and the macro obstacles to, whether it's the individual or in the industry as a whole?
I think at a micro level, electricity is still a problem, but I think a bigger problem, which really affects a lot more things, is the non-availability of unmetered internet. I think that, well, people are figuring their way around the electricity problem. Almost everybody has a generator, right? So, you have a generator, you have an inverter, you have two generators, and so on and so forth. People figure their way out around those things. So that's one. I noted this in the white paper. We've started work on dealing with those things. There is that disconnect between artists and the business of animation, or business generally. Most artists seem to not understand that it's a business, right? So
Yeah.
they don't understand that animation in particular is one of the it's an intellectual property business. So in order to succeed at an intellectual property business, you have to know a little bit of law, a little bit of finance, it's just the important stuff that, as it applies to you, most of our people don't know, or maybe just don't care about these things, and so they are unable to protect themselves. They're unable to keep their money. Another factor is that the animation advertising business, which is essentially the mainstay of most animation companies in Nigeria, is relatively small, relatively. So, and then there's also the fact that animation is perceived to be a cheaper alternative to live action, which is a bit strange because it's more expensive to produce, but
the lay person really is. Even I had somebody message me today, and I'm like, just to let you know, animation is expensive. Like,
So micro problems, yes. Earlier this year, or late last year, we were in talks with banks, with a couple of banks, and it was pretty obvious that they also did not. There's very little information about the animation value chain. People simply don't understand it. Ab initio, you're talking to an investor, and the guy is thinking, look, what these people are doing isn't particularly lucrative. There's not much of a market to this because he hasn't seen any numbers. So people don't understand how the business can be profitable. So I mean, when people don't, as a result, there is not a lot of investment funding coming into the industry. Although that is beginning to change. We're beginning to see a couple of people who we're beginning to get into more investment conversations. In recent times, thanks to COVID-19 and the pandemic, because it's animation production well, I won't say the only, but animation production could go on unhindered even when all the sets had to shut down.
Right.
So that invited some very interesting conversations. Okay, so this is possible, and we can make stuff, from this. Micro problems. I mentioned access to talent. It is still a problem. So what is happening? Because we're seeing people develop, but most of the most of the guys who have really broken through have been self-starters, and so, and those ones will not be the majority.
Yeah,
So
right.
we don't yet have a large talent pool, which is a problem that that we are working on. I think various studios have their own initiatives to address that talent problem, through mentorships, through trainings, and so on and so forth. Um, we are trying to fly under the radar and not make too much noise about the animation industry, because government policy is a bit unpredictable. Um, Recently, for instance, um, the government said that you could not have exclusive rights to any IP. Yeah, that's crazy, right? You
Yeah.
know, so all the pay TV guys had to go up in arms and say, hey, you guys are destroying us. Because I
Right.
mean, without content exclusivity, the pay TV business is dead on arrival, and the content business with it. So, so
That's one of those
that's
things where you're like, how did you even think of that?
you understand, because they're like, look, if you create content, we should all share. What? Are you serious? Do you know what goes into making content? Why should we share? You know, so that, to be honest with you, but that's a macro problem. That's a really macro problem. I think
Right.
I tend to think a lot more about the macro problems. The micro problems are inconveniences that you can get around. You know,
Yeah.
If you have sufficient foresight and you are mentoring people, you are unlikely to have a critical talent problem. You know, I think. If you you know if you face the fact that there's not a lot of electricity, you're going to solve your electricity problems.
Right.
Um, so they're not roadblocks in the strictest sense of it, right? They are inconveniences that an entrepreneur will just have to scale over, just like entrepreneurs do in other parts of the world. It's just that we have our own set of problems, and
Right.
you know, other parts of the world have theirs. Um, but the macro problems are the ones that are a bit more difficult to deal with, because even after you've done all you can, a macro problem can still represent an effective shutdown on all of
Yeah.
your efforts. Um, because it bothers me, for instance, that not I don't really, apart from Bino and Fino, maybe. Apart from Bino and Fino, actually, because I know that, they've been in the content space for much longer. You know Bino and Fino? I
I'm not sure.
sorry.
I'm not sure if I know them.
Oh, okay. Bino and Fino is a cartoon series for kids.
Okay.
It was made by EVCL. That's It's an Abuja-based company, and they've been churning out quite a significant volume of content.
Okay.
They sell merchandise all over the world, uh, and they're right now featured on airlines and so on and so forth. And I mean,
Okay.
they are well, I would say they are emerging um, as a viable alternative to Western created content. For I think for the age group is somewhere between 4 and 10.
Okay.
But they are those are the guys that I know who are really making a strong inroad into content. I also know, okay, then there's Total Tidal. I don't know how far they have gone monetizing, but I know that they have made some money. But those. But the thing is, like I said at the very beginning, the absence of a clear local value chain is what
Yeah.
all of these guys are struggling with. Have to say, you have to sell, you have to export.
Yeah. So you talked about it a little bit before, but what does your studio or you do to improve the landscape of animation in Nigeria? I know you all had a symposium earlier. You mentioned your workshops and programs last year. So what are you all trying to do to change the animation landscape?
Yeah. Well, one of the first things. So one of the things, the first thing was training, because we need to solve the talent problem. But also, we're doing a lot of fundraising
Mm-hmm.
because training is not an end in itself. Training does not. You have to create jobs for
Yeah.
there to be success stories, right? So um, we're doing a lot of fundraising right now.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I can't talk too much about it until all of those things are closed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because we're working on creating projects that are large enough to employ a decent team and keep that team for a while to create high volume content.
Yeah.
Um, Also understanding that the business of animation doesn't really favor skits very much.
Mm-hmm.
So, so if you have a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and that's all you've got, it's not very interesting
Mm-hmm.
from a monetization standpoint. Um, I think animation starts getting interesting when you have 100 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So, or 130 minutes. That's 13 units of 10 minutes each. Now you're in business when you have that. So we're working on a lot of fundraising at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because somebody's got to do it. It's
Right.
similar to what Unique did with
Mm-hmm.
Malaika,
Mm-hmm.
because that project, just like Dawn of Thunder, I don't know if you've come across Dawn of Thunder from
Yeah.
Commotion Studios.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, those large projects, those ambitious projects, do a lot more to put the region on the map
Mm-hmm.
than the random skit that everybody shares and forgets about after a couple of months. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are working on producing at that level,
Mm-hmm.
so that so that we can make we can well um, create the success story.
Yeah.
That's the point of it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I looking at things, I believe that perhaps the biggest scarcity is the absence of someone who has gone there and actually, seen the whole thing through and succeeded. Because I mean, for us,
Mm-hmm.
so for instance, succeeding would be Malika getting funded to do 1352 26
Mm-hmm.
episodes. That's succeeding. That's
Yeah.
okay. You are now in the marketplace. You know,
Right.
um, um, everybody is still pretty much in that incubation stage
Mm-hmm.
wherein you are watching your burn rates. You're not yet in touch with your market. So those are two key things. We are also doing a lot of uh, technical research,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak. Um, we are working to extend the opportunities in the animation space.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so prior prior to what we did, I'm not aware of any animation studios that had parlayed their skill in computer generated imagery into things like VR,
Yeah.
into safety, experiential
Mm-hmm.
projects that bordered um, along the line more that be more like technology than art.
Okay.
Because the truth is,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, animation really is on the bridge between tech and art. It
Yeah.
marries both. But most of us practitioners stay, or stay more on the art side of things than the technology side of things. Um, so we are also working to extend the possibilities um, s- on the technology side of things, because because in Nigeria, as well as most developing markets, the B2B market
Mm-hmm.
is more flush with cash than the B2C market.
Right.
So so we are doing a lot of product development for that market, which we expect that in the years to come we'll find other startups following our footsteps and making
Mm-hmm.
sense of that environment. So that's that. And we also do. We've also done some uh, symposium. Well, okay, so this year we were meant to have like 4 symposia, but
Right.
yeah,
COVID.
yeah, about COVID, right? But so we had one in February. So we're based in Yaba.
Mm-hmm.
Yaba is like, well, some people call it the Silicon Valley of Nigeria because of the concentration of technology startups, which is quite true. Also because there are a number of higher institutions around. So we reached out to students from those higher institutions, those in the faculties of creative arts and so on. We brought them in for a symposium to show them what was possible, to
Mm-hmm.
show them how the skills that they're currently learning could be directly applied to a career within film, animation, computer generated imagery, that industry. And we really got very good feedback at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess next year we'll have to pick up
Yeah.
from there, to create opportunity for just to inspire the younger generation. So I think that would be a lot of the work we've been doing. We're also through our blog. Well, I think although that might have slowed down a bit, but that thing about educating people about animation and about
Yeah.
what goes into it. So we've been doing we earlier this year we were doing quite a bit of that, trying to demystify um,
Mm-hmm.
animation production. So for anybody who might be interested, whether you be an investor, a client, or an enthusiast, someone who is looking to get into the field, just to
Mm-hmm.
help folks understand what's going on in there. So yeah, I think I think that's about it for now. Right.
Yeah. Wonderful. Um, what are if you know this, what are the leading countries in Africa as far as animation? What are the hubs around the continent?
Hmm. South Africa. That's really the lead. To be honest with you, um, sub-Saharan Africa.
Hmm.
I I don't. I think Kenya, Kenya, Uganda. There are some guys in Kenya and Uganda doing stuff. Um, of course, you most likely have heard about or come across. I think Richard's work, the Calabanda, if my homework. That
Hmm.
was a really bright light from East Africa.
Hmm.
There's a lot of animation going on in Egypt, but
Mm.
yeah, funny enough, but
Anything out
there,
of Ghana?
there is some animation going on in Ghana.
Hmm.
Yeah, we the like Nukima Games. There are these guys Nukima Games, um, and there are a number of small studios, pretty
Hmm.
much startups just like what we have in Nigeria, who are making incursions. I think Nukima Games, they were working on a really large open world game and they've been at that for 3 years.
Okay.
You know, so, I want to imagine that it's a really massive project, and so we're looking forward to seeing that
Mm-hmm.
screen. There is somewhat going on in Ghana, but here's the thing:
Mm-hmm.
for some reason, we don't see a lot of it here.
Mm.
I for some reason, for some reason, it appears that the content from Nigeria appears to be traveling farther in sub-Saharan Africa,
Mm-hmm.
appears to be, than the content from other countries in sub-Saharan Africa. Maybe because of the population and the fact that Nigerians are pretty loud. You know, you know, maybe, but that's been the phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but Ghana is doing much better, in my opinion, in terms of having an ecosystem to support the industry. You
Mm.
have a couple of film festivals out of Ghana. You know, have a couple that really support that creative community. So yeah,
Yeah.
um, yeah. But
Uh,
But,
mhm.
but those are the hubs, really. South Africa. South Africa is the big hub.
Yeah. Uh, let's see. What do you feel Nigeria and other African countries can give to the world as far as, a different perspective, or even if you think about providing eventually providing a workforce similar to Asian countries where, you export the animation work to African countries. What do you think about that?
I think it's a great idea. It's an idea that we have been. I mean, I think. Well, it's something that I hinted at in that white paper also,
Hmm.
as a clear, well, the clear opportunity for Nigerian creatives. Um, you know, because I think right now all of the countries that have now become animation powerhouses started that way. And
Hmm.
I'm talking about Malaysia, you know, India, China
Hmm.
now.
Hmm.
Um, uh, many even uh, think, think South Korea. Many of
Yeah.
those guys started out creating content to serve the Western market on contract, and
Hmm.
they built capacity creating content at that level until the capacity was not just technical capacity but also financial capacity,
Right.
because they were able to access deal sizes that simply were not available in their own countries.
Hmm.
So that I do some work with Animation Nigeria. So there's a body that's been put together. I'll just say a little bit.
Hmm.
There's a body that's been put together, a professional body to oversee and to guide the practice of animation in Nigeria. Okay,
Hmm.
so um, part of the roadmap for that body is positioning the Nigerian animation industry as a a destination is not the right word, but a vendor pool or a talent pool of choice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that I think that's one thing that India really got right,
Hmm.
um, and China got very very right, and so that and for us, we've spoken earlier on about the the non-existent or the weak distribution networks. So
Hmm.
for for creatives or for producers in Nigeria, the ability to produce for other nations or for other markets where those systems exist is the clear and
Yeah.
present opportunity. So yeah, it's a for me it's like yes, this is the clear and present opportunity. Yeah,
Hmm.
and it's a bigger and more interesting market than the local animation advertising industry.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's that's very much something that Nigerian creatives are looking at, and that's from the business perspective. Okay.
Right.
Now, um, African animation has a
Mm-hmm.
lot of a lot of a lot of a lot to offer the world
Mm-hmm.
because our mythology is so different from
Yeah.
the mythology from everywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So um, in private conversations, I say that um, when you watch Chinese animation, in particular Chinese slash Japanese, Asian Oriental animation, right? You
Mm-hmm.
would see, in fact, if I may zero in a little more on China, they
Mm-hmm.
are pushing Tai Chi.
Mm-hmm.
They're pushing Tai Chi specifically, which is a really mystical art. It's it's almost as much mysticism as physical exertion,
Mm-hmm.
and it one would call that gesture activated magic.
Mm-hmm.
But um, African magic is different.
Mm-hmm.
It's voice activated, and I think that when African creatives are able to visualize their own magic,
Yeah.
visualize their own mythology,
Mm-hmm.
in line with world-class production values, right?
Mm-hmm.
We will be showing the world something they've never seen before,
Mm-hmm.
really. Um, I think that's what I find exciting about Ridwan's project, for instance, and some of the things that we have in the pipeline.
Right.
Um, because, you know, just as I cannot um, faithfully describe the streets of London,
Mm-hmm.
it's impossible for someone from that part of the world to faithfully describe the streets of Lagos.
Right.
However, we are all human, and
Mm-hmm.
there are aspirations and goals uh, and impressions and emotions that are felt in those
Right.
local contexts that that would resonate with anybody anywhere in the world.
Right.
So we have a lot to add to the global conversation,
Mm-hmm.
to the global, I use the word tapestry of emotions,
Yeah.
just by putting our content out there. Um, you there was I would go back a little to a skit that myself and Richard Obo did back in 2012,
Mm-hmm.
2013, right?
Mm-hmm.
Called Bedu. It went pretty viral. I don't know if you got to see it. Um,
You can send me the link so I can
I,
put it
I,
in the description so everybody can see it.
yeah, okay, sure. So it was just two guys watching TV and essentially goofing around. But
I think I've seen that.
okay, yeah, because it went pretty far out.
Mm-hmm.
There was another project skit that we did here in Quadron about a very mischievous rat. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you you might, I mean, the rats on the streets of Lagos are very aggressive, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you might not have that specific experience in your particular city,
Mm-hmm.
but um, everybody in the world has experienced a little bit of a pesky rodent or a
Mm-hmm.
pesky animal that is, um, at expressing emotions that 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 okay. Let me pull back a little bit and say this. The idea of the rat is of those the kind of rats that become the landlord when they come when when they get a foothold in your house, the kind of rats that you don't scare easily.
Yeah.
So
That definitely sounds like either rats in New York City or when you're trying to get rid of a water bug or a cockroach.
so the thing is, um, when we just express ourselves,
Yeah.
um, without trying to pander too much to
Hmm.
global tastes,
Right.
we add something unique and peculiar to
Hmm.
global conversations. So I think that, yeah, we really do have a lot to contribute in that sense. Uh,
Yeah, I definitely was talking to someone yesterday about how whether it's Black American content or even some African content that I've seen, it's like, oh man, I was expecting something different, like, but it's like, well, this is what white people could produce. So it's just like,
Sorry?
why are you? Sometimes when I watch, people from the diaspora and creating content, they create the same content that white people create. And it's kind of disappointing because we bring so much different things. And it's like, okay,
Mm.
if I'm watching something from Africa, I don't want to see something that is from the West, like, or
Yeah,
like,
what's the point? What's the point? Yeah, you know, yeah, really. I'm very happy about the direction that Nigerian animation in particular has
Mhm.
gone. I think more than any other group of animators, Nigerian animators have um, have been have followed Nollywood in
Okay.
that they didn't try to create what they think the West might want to see.
Right.
They are just creating for themselves, which
Hmm.
is, yeah. So I think that's the way to success.
Yeah.
But we need to connect those distribution networks.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
I
please.
see I see that there are a lot of programs being started by people, companies in the US, other countries, and African countries that are providing resources to Africans to learn animation. Do you feel
Yeah.
like this is like a long time coming? And what do you hope this does for the animation industry in Nigeria as foreign interests or even other African countries kind of gain interest, or even government? What do you hope for the
Hmm.
future?
What programs are you referring to?
Uh, I know there I feel like I saw an article in the past year about an American company funding like learning in an African country. I probably should have wrote that down, but because I don't remember exactly. But there are foreign interests in African countries where they want to help other you know people in the world learn animation. So
Hmm.
even if you don't
Okay.
know about that in particular, what do you hope comes from that?
Well, apart from YouTube, you
Hmm.
know, um, well, I would say this. Online education has been available for a while, right?
Hmm.
Through Animation Mentor, Anim School, um, and a couple of other Nomon School of Visual Effects. And, so
Yeah.
even though they tend to be expensive,
Right.
so they're not so accessible
Hmm.
for most guys.
Hmm.
Um, the the funded program I haven't seen personally. The French have been they've been having some workshops. They've
Hmm.
done quite some work to bring animation training to Nigeria. 2-week workshops, week-long workshops, 3-week workshops, and so on. So there's been those efforts, and it's great
Hmm.
because well, we will take everything.
Right.
you know so it's only positive, really.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
only positive. So I'd say, yeah, please bring it on.
Hmm.
uh, Absolutely.
So, do you have any expectations for working together, or have you had any thoughts about working together across the diaspora in animation, with Black Americans or Black in the UK or anything, and coming together
Yes,
to,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Um, in fact, we are in a number of conversations with people from, from Europe and from the US in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, people from Europe, from US, from Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just Quadron Studios. Um, and yeah, absolutely. That's personally, I see more Nigerians, more Nigerian animators stepping out into the marketplace to try to connect the dots from there.
Mm-hmm.
So, sort of becoming evangelists of
Yeah.
the Nigerian animation industry, and selling what we've got to a
Mm-hmm.
global audience. Um, that has been happening through Animation Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think Animation Nigeria has been represented at not at Cannes, at Annecy,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
Discop. So Discop South Africa,
Okay.
Digital
Mm-hmm.
Labs, Discop, and a couple of other marketplaces. There's also MIPCOM.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had um, leaders, folks from the Nigerian animation industry, animation under the auspices of that organization,
Mm-hmm.
try to evangelize,
Yeah.
talk about the local industry, try to sell our services as vendors of choice,
Mm-hmm.
because of course obviously we cannot compete with the Asians on the basis of
Mm-hmm.
quality just yet,
Right.
just yet, simply
Mm-hmm.
because the talent pool isn't that rich, isn't that
Mm-hmm.
deep,
Yeah.
But I guess we have to sadly compete on the basis of price.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's that. But that's it's a harsh reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So so a lot of that, so that has started happening. That's started happening 2 years ago, and
Mm-hmm.
it's increasing in frequency and in intensity. So I think that is something else that's going on. Yeah, pretty much.
So, what do we have to look forward to coming from Quadron Studios?
Hmm. Okay, so we have a lot of stuff that's ongoing.
Okay.
Um, we are looking to develop Scalable into a much bigger, product project. We are in the middle of we are in the early stages of that. Like I said, we're doing a lot of fundraising right now,
Mm-hmm.
um, and we have a lot of stories that we had conceptualized that we will be developing pilots for. You know, so next year, but this
Mm-hmm.
no, not by Q4 next year, um,
Mm-hmm.
Quadron Studios would have a lot of content to sell, a lot of
Okay.
content to show, and Quadron Studios in particular um, would will be open for business as a global vendor
Okay.
for outsourced animation production,
Mm-hmm.
officially. So we are putting the frameworks together for that right now. So
Nice. So,
pretty much, yeah, we now apart from that, we have a lot going on in the virtual reality space. Um we have a number of projects that we are working on in the safety space, in the um, also in the cultural space, in the arts and culture space,
mm-hmm.
to leverage on virtual reality to really um, bring experiences to people all over the world. So
Yeah.
those are some of the projects that we have in the pipeline. Yeah, we will continue developing talent. We'll continue creating content. We'll continue doing what we do. Continue looking at grants maybe. Yeah. So yeah.
And if people want to follow your studio, what platforms can they, or let people know your website, your social media platforms, anything we can follow you on?
Yeah, we can be found on Instagram, on Twitter, at Quadron Studios. Our website is quadronstudios.com. Facebook.com/Quadron Studios. So we're Quadron Studios everywhere. Pretty much.
All right. I would like to thank Tayo from. Yes, YouTube too. I would like to thank Tayo for coming to speak with me, and for everyone watching, I would like you to like So I Know It's Real, comment and tell me how you feel, subscribe to Seal the Deal, and sign up for post notifications to show your zeal. And I will see you in the next video. Peace.
Thank you. Peace.